Welcome to
What's a block?
Triple Blockheads,
Back set. Block down.
the podcast for all things volleyball.
Blockhead!
Aloha and welcome to another episode of Triple Blockheads. Makani, Mark, Frank, we're going to continue our skill progression. We've talked about serving, we've talked about passing, and then who are the passers passing to?
Is it setters? Is it the
You were
setters?
right, or hopefully the setters and not somebody else taking the out-of-system ball that we talked about in a prior episode. But we'll go ahead and talk about setting. We'll start from the beginning in the development stage, early development of setters. Frank, what are some of the things that you're looking at from just skill development or technique or some key areas that really support setter development?
Yeah, posture right away. Young kids, I don't think we're pigeonholing anyone into being a setter right away. We kind of want them all to do a little bit of setting, especially within training. Maybe on our 11s and 12s teams, we have like 3 or 4 kids setting if it makes sense for the group. But I think the thing that we want to get in their game right away is what their posture should feel like, what their hands should feel like, starting to introduce some of the biomechanics of generating power. What does it take? What's it going to feel like for you to set the ball this high in the air for that long and make it land over there in that spot in the court? What does it feel like trying to back set? What do your hips kind of feel like? So just introducing some movements and some body part movements that might feel really, really weird for them, but getting them to, I think, start off with having good posture, especially on the way to the ball, not getting too tall too early, but kind of keeping their legs loaded so they can generate some power and set a ball high at the younger age groups.
Is there an element of that you think the younger kids need to focus on more, like one section of it? Like,
Yeah, I think it's the legs part. It's like the generating power part, you know?
that's what I was hoping you were going to say.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And I compared a lot to passing with the other kids. It's like, what does it feel like? We're teaching the same thing with passing, right? Stay low, move athletic. And it really shouldn't be that different when you're in your approach as a setter going to the ball. Like, let's try to feel like a passer, but when we get there, we're going to use our hands instead. So I think that's a good way to keep it simple without making it seem like such a new concept. But yeah, it's legs and generate power, and how do you put the ball high?
I completely agree. I was bit of a loaded, but
Trying to trick me.
I wanted you to say legs. That's the number one I see is people try and go all upper body way too soon. They just aren't strong enough to do that and
Yeah.
get a lot of future mechanical issues if you try and progress without your legs too early. But I think a good way to kind of remedy that early is to force them to set a ball with straight legs. Like, all right, here, lock out your knees and set these like next five balls. All right, now bend your knees and use your legs and set these next 5 balls. And they will see the difference instantly and be like, oh, yeah, I guess I should use my legs more.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? That's
for
an
sure.
easy way to, similarly for passing, you can do the same thing.
Totally agree. It's almost like we're trying to attack the pass as a setter. I think that's a good little analogy we can use with young kids is go attack it. Like, go be aggressive with it.
Especially the adult genesis, you're going to need the skill of just finding the ball and just anticipating the ball. Is there anything that you guys work early on just giving them some reps or some cues on how to anticipate where the ball is going so that you're moving to it quickly so that not becomes a fire drill as you're trying to deliver that second ball?
Anytime you can point score things, I think that's a positive thing. It reinforces that this has to happen and you get to win a game because of it. So if you're talking about grading good passes with younger kids, maybe you just grade it based on if the setter can get her hands on the ball. And it doesn't force the passers to have to be perfect. And now the setter takes a lot of pride in I score a point with my teammates if I just get my hands on the ball. And they're maybe pursuing some balls that are pretty far away. And I think also if it makes sense for your team and who the hitters are and strategy-wise, can you put your setter in serve-receive rotations where the movement isn't as complicated? Can you set a couple rotations where they're front-middle instead of having to
Setting out a 2 and 5 instead of 1 and 4.
Yeah, and then you probably have more kids setting, which is a good thing anyways for young kids. So I think on coaches we have some responsibility in that too. Like let's make the movements less complicated for young kids in serve receive.
I think oversimplification at the young age, especially in the setting where as they continue to progress, getting consistent and repeatable type of mechanics if all they're doing is just chucking things up in early, I think to your point, try to make it as simple as possible for these younger ones so they can see success and see that repeatability.
There's something to be said, though, about having a good 12s team who's maybe starting to learn a 6-2.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that you have to cross that threshold eventually if you're going to get into 13s and 14s and be competitive, if you have the group that makes sense. But I think that's the big thing, is knowing what group you have and can they handle some 6-2 philosophies, or now the libero takes second ball when you start introducing some of that. So it's going to have to happen anyways, but I think as a coach, you want to just build the progressions towards that.
Mm-hmm.
I just watched a coach's clinic with Todd Maddox, really good youth coach, runs, I believe, Beach out in California. But he was talking to him about they start off in a 6-3 in a similar fashion as you would start a 3 middle, where every other person is a setter. That means that person sets when they're in middle front and right front, and then they get to swing when they're in left front, which generally the people that you're going to make the setter are your best athletes. They probably are your best hitter. They're the most athletically refined at that point, so you don't want to just have them set, but you do want them to set the balls because they can do it. So that 6-3 was an interesting concept. And then how they then adjusted was, okay, now you're setting from same setup, but you're going to set from right front and right back. And those are your 2 rotations setting. And now we're introducing that back row concept into a pretty young play or young level of play. But I thought it was really, really interesting just conceptually. And like, I think we get so pigeonholed into 5-1, 6-2, 4-2, you know what I mean? These traditional systems. Be creative, like mess around with it. You may have 4 kids that are great athletes that you want all to get setting reps and get swings. Okay, well, there's a system that you can make or a rotation that you can create that's going to get what you want out of it. So let it happen, right?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the hardest ball to set is something that's coming from your left, even coming from your other shoulder. So, I mean, why not just put everybody on that side so everything's in front of you, right? It sounds simple, but yeah, it takes someone to really be creative and innovative about how you want to develop and start that process. So talked a lot about just kind of getting to the ball, posture, et cetera. Is there any cues, early on that you're looking at ball contact and overall just delivery?
Yeah, I think once the setter becomes consistent in being able to get to the ball and get her hands on a lot of things, it's how early can we square up to target, and how can you make it look like you're facing the outside every time you touch the ball, or right before you touch the ball. And then that might be a little awkward, them being maybe facing the outside already, and the ball's coming from their left a little bit. So some of that might not look great right away, but I think just the more reps you get in that situation of squaring up early, you're going to get more consistent at it. But that starts becoming the next thing is, can we start squaring up early? What does that look like from the ball coming from our left? And then can we time up the leg contact delivery of a ball and try and deliver a consistent set? And more back setting, because, if you're running like a 4-2 or something, they might not be using the right side a lot. So then you're having to start introducing some back setting and some of the principles of that, and going over your shoulder and some of the things that we had to do out of system.
Do you like a specific footwork pattern with young players getting to that ball, that sequence of feet, hands, deliver? Like what do you enjoy to do with young players?
There's a lot of different coaches in our gym that have different philosophies on this, and I don't think as a club we're trying to do the same thing. I think we're teaching it kind of based on the athlete and letting them be pretty creative with how they get to the ball. As long as they feel, no matter what, like you're in a good posture before the ball's in your hands and you're able to go attack kind of the touch into following through to your target. I think that's what we care about more. But like your footwork pattern going into that, I think it's going to differentiate based on your defensive system and where you're coming from out of transition and what your blocking scheme is. If you block a lot of line, your footwork pattern to the ball after you block might be a little bit different. So I don't really care too much about what they do early on in their approach. I just care about their posture early on. And are they in a position to use their legs later and be really aggressive going into the finish of the contact? And do they look neutral? Does it look like they're setting the ball to the outside every time so that when we do get older and we try to create more one-on-one situations, we aren't, giving that away. So there's other coaches in the club who are different, who want them to go right, left, or opposite, left, right, or right, left. Some are teaching the spin if they're super late. I think everyone's pretty different about that, but I want them to be pretty creative. I just want them to feel a couple things that we think are important that I think is important to creating power and tempo.
I agree with a lot of what you said there. To me, the footwork pattern is less important, right? The ultimate goal is that you're in a strong position and can deliver the ball where you need to. So however you get to that point, I do think there are certain ways that make it, certain moves are easier to gain balance in a jump stop versus a left-right, depending on where that ball is. But ultimately, as they progress, they're going to be jump setting. So it's how do I get my feet there and then jump versus jumping to a ball and then trying to locate where it ends up going afterwards. Which
have there been any
issues?
Like in the college side, I might be jumping the gun here a little bit, but on the college side, any of the coaches that you've worked with who have been in charge of setting, have they totally tried to change someone's rhythm or footwork, or is it more just you're working with what you got? And
I feel like all collegiate coaching as far as technical changes is a pick your battles type of thing. You have to pick things that you think you can actually affect change in a relative quick manner. So like completely rebuilding an arm swing is going to take most of a year if you really want to change the mechanics and of just repping and getting lots and tons, 30,000 good reps of that to change an arm swing. I would say a footwork pattern for a setter is similar to that. They just have done it so many times. If you're really going to try and adjust and have them go off 1 foot all the time or spin or whatever it is, I think that becomes a difficult thing to change, where it may be easier for me to make an adjustment to your release or where you're contacting it rather than your movement pattern. And we can talk about, I would say, relative to tracking the ball and movement, we talk about the shape of your path more than anything else, less about the mechanics of how you get there. But when you are attacking and tracking that ball, are you putting yourself in a position where you're getting behind it to then transfer weight through it? Or are you going straight at it and now I'm taking it left eye or even off to the side? Like, just are we shaping that path that's going to set you up for success, I think becomes the most important piece of that.
Yeah, that's good.
I think sometimes too, especially at the Division I level, I mean, those are the things you're looking at is what type of technique they have is fit into your style and your technique anyway. That you're selecting, and that's the only factor, but it is a factor.
For sure. Yeah, I think that if I don't love what you do technically, I'm not going to recruit you into my gym with something that I think I might have to change. You know what I mean? So that's really how you hedge, but then it's way benefit cost and time from there. But yeah.
And I think, and as you get down into different levels or different programs, I think, you get the best athlete. And then they may not necessarily be the best deliverer of the ball at that moment in time, but you have an athlete that you believe you can work with. And then I think there becomes much more technical, and you kind of groom them into what technical philosophies that you may want to have. And I think that's when you really, to your point, you're investing in that athlete, because that's what you have to do at that whatever level of play that you have. So I think you see more tweaking of bigger techniques in certain levels, NAIA, Division III, JUCO, than you do at Division I, Division II, because they can be selective relative to what type of techniques and philosophies that they believe in. So
we have a doubles update. So the Lone Star region is getting rid of doubles effective immediately.
Oh, immediately?
Yeah. And so there's more regions now. USA Volleyball as a governing body is thinking about getting rid of it.
Wow.
I've heard in the next couple months, like maybe by nationals, there could be a vote.
Yeah.
And there will be no more club doubles. This is all speculation, but
Lone Star, though, for sure.
they're already
got
gone.
rid of it.
I
Yeah.
heard it was driving off of a podcast that they recently listened to.
I think we have some Texas listeners, or our boy from Germany flew over there. And,
Exactly.
Told him what's up.
So as you identified your players who are going to be invested in being a setter, because I think early on you are, to your point, everyone's skill training. There comes a point, especially in the setting position, that you call the ball. Like this is where I'm going to be. This is what I want to invest in. What are the things that you're looking for to say, yeah, as your coach or as someone who is invested in you, I can endorse that because I believe that you can be successful in it. And then B, how does that training change, from in the gym, club development?
I think this is where the setter's personality is so interesting. Like, are you a competitor? Do you want to win? What are your habits like? Doesn't necessarily mean you have to have certain athletic attributes like all the other setters have that you look up to, but do you want to win? And can you increase your IQ and manage the game from kind of viewing the game from the outside in now instead of looking at just what you're doing, and is that good enough? And if we think that, at least in our club, and I'm sure the setters that we've all worked with, if we think we have a competitor who has pretty good hands, well, now the block's getting better and defenders are getting better. So we have to learn tempo, and we have to learn how to develop schemes and how we're going to communicate that to our hitters, and how we as setters can put our hitters in good spots, but also how we can reinforce with the words that we say what we expect from them. And it's a beautiful art being a setter and running a good offense, because you're learning all these different personalities on your team and how to get each one to click at a certain time. Because what you say feedback wise to your 0-1 compared to what you might say to your middle, it might be completely different based on their personalities and how you get them to stay present, if they make a hitting error or whatnot. So gotta start playing faster as we get older, start running offenses that put blocks in bad situations and make diggers have to work harder to dig balls.
I think Frank nailed it throughout that. The thing is, once you decide you're going to be a setter, now you get to be exposed to all the other things that make a setter, and not just someone who sets volleyballs, right? And all those, I don't know, more intangible things, the leadership, the cerebral acceptance of the game and wanting to learn the IQ piece, the game strategy, all that stuff is the differentiators between people who deliver good balls and setters. And I think that's the fun part. I think as a coach, I love coaching kids that want to learn IQ stuff and game situation stuff, because I know you're going to be competitive in a little bit different way, rather than I just want to really focus on setting a 1.1 second go ball in this exact spot every time. That's great. And that's the first step, right? We got to have a hittable, consistent ball before we can make the right choice, before we can make the deceptive choice. So you're not wrong, but how do we keep progressing through that?
I love coaching those kids, man. I mean, I think that's why I got into coaching, because that's the setter that I became. I knew I wasn't very tall and didn't jump very high compared to other setters, but the beauty of volleyball is that you can still win by being cerebral, by being smart, by just taking the time to understand your teammates and almost getting yourself to program them a certain way as a setter, so that in crucial moments, all that equity of time you put in with your teammates pays off, because that was something as a setter that you took an advantage towards, And then that, I think that those setters are so successful in college if they can grasp some of that in club, because now they are the coach on the court. There's very different conversations that a coach and a setter can have when their setter is at that point. And hopefully you execute better because of it.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, right? And I think it's great for the viewers and the listeners, because we started off identifying just the setting skills for everyone to kind of develop, and then becomes, hey, now you've decided to be a setter. The most important thing that we're talking about is the will, the passion, the drive, the competitiveness, the leadership. These are all things that came up before our discussion, which will go there around, technique around jump setting, or delivery and identification of your of your contact point and high contact. Like those are the technical parts. But if you don't have the will, you don't have the want to, you don't have the competitive drive or the leadership capabilities or just overall personality that way, it's really kind of a moot point, right? If you really want to be a successful setter.
Yeah.
But talking about just training and technical development, now we're into kind of this prospect, 16, 17, 18 club setter. You know what your role is. You've accepted your role. Like, what are the things that you're really driving to try to get them to be noticed?
I think it's on the coach to make sure you're also being aware of what's happening in college. When the BIC got really popular, like, are you bringing that to your club gym because you want your setter to have an idea of what's coming when they get to the next level? So I think it's some of that. It's like staying in tune with what's next. And I know this last couple college years, you're seeing a lot of tight balls out of system from the setter. So even the lib too. So like in our gym, we're trying to do some of that too, and that's totally different than what we used to say a couple years ago. So I think when your kid is getting really, really good, it's making sure you're preparing them for what's coming after that and where the game is going, whether it's the BIC or some of the floating wraps from the middle or the tight ball out of system.
Are there any like specific technical cues that you are trying to develop? Because again, as a setter, you're touching every second ball.
Yeah.
So you're touching it more than everybody else. So your ability to self-correct in match is paramount because you have to understand your own mechanics. Like, what do I want to do? What's my own rhythm, my own delivery method? Are there things that you are instilling words or cues to say, hey, off your right, for example, or things like that you really are passionate about?
I think when we're in a game, not as much technical stuff because everything's very strategy based. But when we're training and we have some isolated setter time, it's how neutral am I? What does it look like I'm about to set? And if it looks like it's the same set every time, and then you're able to flip it with tempo and accuracy, that's a good place to be. So asking the setter, what'd you feel like right as you got to the ball? Where did it feel like you were facing? And giving them some cues where that they could figure that out by themselves if we are in a match. But so yeah, just being neutral. And then I think the second thing is just how early are our hands prepared to receive a ball. So as we move to the ball, can we start getting our hands up early instead of getting to the ball and then trying to make a hands up move and hoping that our elbows are high enough or whatnot. And then once we're in game, it's like set decision happens. How'd the block react to it? Were you able to gather as much data as you can for that rotation? And how's that going to influence the next decision we make if we're in system in that same rotation? So a little less technical stuff when we're playing.
Yeah, for sure. I was just more thinking like, if you train in your training sessions, you're instilling these cues for your players to then.
It's really the same. For the most part, same principles that we're kind of telling the young kids. Like, what's your posture like? How athletic do you feel in your move to the ball? And how neutral do you feel as you're finishing your approach?
Yeah, I like that. Heard the term setting in a chimney, but in terms of like that posture and how to get vertical. But yeah, that body neutrality is super, super important as you continue to progress. The college game is so much about getting a split. You know what I mean? If you can freeze a middle for just that tenth of a second, that's enough to open up a hole for a pin that can get a kill into that space. So for us, that if we're giving something away, leaning prior to release of that set, we're putting ourselves at a real disadvantage. So that body neutrality, strength, balance, all of those become really, really important. And then we will talk a lot about decisions. What'd you feel from your block scheme? Did you see what your middle did when they ran a 3, right? Did they front? Did they read? And that should lead to a lot more decisions, correct one-on-one or split decisions moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with all those things. We're in lower level collegiate, like you're always trying to give some cues just to make sure that they are understanding what resonates with them, and things like finding your balance, or make sure you're loaded, make sure that you're ticking at 12 o'clock, making sure that hey, is it onto your right and not to your left? These are all things that I think are really important for as that athlete gets into a spot where you're going to be a setter, these are self-correctable items that are, hey, in the moment, you're not being overcritical of yourself, but you understand there's a cause and effect to everything. And because you're touching every single second ball, that cause and effect is coming in real time.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for that.
And I think all of it has to be progressively trained, because if you can't deliver a good ball, it doesn't matter that your back is perfectly straight.
Right.
You know what I mean? If it's not hittable, then we need to focus on that before anything else. So just make sure you keep the first thing. They need to be able to put up consistent hittable balls. And if they can't do that, then we don't need to focus on anything else, because that's the number one. Right.
We got a 101, but we had to tip it.
Not good.
Not great.
So as that prospect is getting into, really getting some looks, what are some of the things that you're looking for, Mark, to say this club setter, this high school setter, this young level athlete can translate into a leader of my collegiate program?
So evaluating setters takes more time, I would say, than probably some other positions, because I can look at a pin, watch them swing a couple times, and know, do they have the arm? Are they the athlete?
You're bouncy.
And then yes or no, and move on.
Yeah.
Setters, initially, I'm looking for the physical stuff, right? Quickness, agility, block size. Are you a willing defender? The way you communicate to your teammates, right? Those are all I can see initial impressions. I have to watch more and longer to see tempo consistency, location on the move, like those types of things. But that's the next progression is, all right, can you deliver a ball in tempo? Can you get beyond 10 feet and still deliver a ball in tempo? What's your wrist strength kicking a slide or a 5 from over half the court? You know what I mean? We're looking for those types of, strength, skill development, skill acquisition type of stuff. And then it becomes, is she creating splits? Do we think she's paying attention to what that middle is doing? Is she setting, how is she going about her decisions? Now, then we'll kind of analyze that piece. Now, the decision-making piece is not the deal breaker, right? If they're not great at that, that's okay, because we can teach that piece, right? The competitiveness, that's a little bit harder to bring out of somebody. How they talk to their teammates, that's another thing that can be difficult to change. So looking at those more intangible but must-have stuff that all great setters have to get you to that point, and then we can teach you a lot of the other stuff. That was pretty vague, but
the part that I thought was interesting was the talking to teammates part. I think that can be interpreted a lot of different ways for like a young setter listening to this. So is there anything specific, maybe the setters that you've had before, that what they do when they were talking to their teammates, like what made them great at it?
I think as a setter, you got to wear the blame, whether it's your fault or not. You could put up the most money set, and if your outside waffles it or hits it in the net or makes an error, you got to go up and be like, hey, I got you. That's on me. Like, I'll get you a better ball, and then you put it away. You know what I mean? Like, looking for those little times to give somebody a boost when maybe they're not feeling the most, but, like, that's what you need from your hitters. Like, I'm going to get you this ball. You better put that thing away. How do we communicate that in a way that isn't me saying, hey, get a kill?
Right.
You know what I mean? That's not a great motivator for your teammate. But you're like, hey, I'll get you a little bit better set. Like, look to use line. That's great information. We can do that. And that hitter has a plan of attack now. You know, I'm going to try and get that ball to the line. And now we're getting kills, and my pin feels a lot better about the situation, even though I didn't really change what I was doing as a setter. Right? I'm still setting you that same ball that was good before. It's good now. You just feel better, so you're going to get a kill. So looking for those types of opportunities to interact. I think coming into a huddle after a point, if you're the voice that like preps the team and gets them ready to go for that next one, you got a great leg up on the communication piece already. So can you start to become the voice on the court for your team. And what does that sound like?
I think it's really hard for kids who are in club to like I think they hear that part, but they're like, man, well, how do I start this journey of communicating to teammates? I don't want to say the wrong thing, and then now my teammates don't like me because I'm really vibing on our team chemistry. And I think experiment. My suggestion would be experiment with different ways to say things to your teammates, but just make sure you follow up with them when you're both off the court or at water breaks and be like, hey, did that make sense what I was saying? Like, here's what I was thinking. Do I need to communicate that differently or something? So I think it can be intimidating sometimes for young kids to try and have that level of setter accountability with their teammates, and they worry about sometimes saying the wrong thing.
100%. We still run into that. And conversely, like the hitters not knowing
The
if
opposite.
the set was bad or it was my fault or whatever. Like we get a lot of that back and forth. Ultimately, that doesn't matter. Like you need something different. You'll make an adjustment too. Like let's just communicate. But I think it's really important to force those communications to happen. So because if you don't, like people will choose the path of least resistance. They're not going to have that uncomfortable talk with your middle or whoever right after. But ultimately, do you want to win? Yes. Do you want to win? Yes. Okay. Then we're not going to get upset when we say I need this ball tighter on the net or whatever, because we both want the same thing, which is for us to win. So I think phrasing it under we all have the same goal. We all want the same things. Here's the information, and then let's move on. But I think when those situations come up, stop the drill. Don't move on. Don't go. Be like, hey, did you like that set? Hey, did you like how you delivered that ball? Force an interaction to happen. Let everybody see that that's what we're encouraging. Like everyone stop and look and see that this is what we're trying to get.
Yeah.
So they have that example or that frame of mind, and now you can start to a little bit more organically insert those situations or opportunities. Or, hey, Pins, have you been talking to your setter today? Not really. Okay, over the next 5 sets, she needs feedback, good or indifferent or change every time. You know what I mean? Just to get used to the communication patterns.
Yeah, it's really good. And I think great setters want that feedback.
They do, and I think hitters think that they don't.
Agreed.
Every setter is like, yeah, no, tell me. And even if I know, I still want to know what you think, even if I'm not going to adjust or I know that you're wrong.
And I think that's why it's really important, especially early on, that it's an overall philosophy as a setter to say, you know what, I need to personally believe, and I need all of my teammates to believe that I'm more happy for them when they succeed than if I do something good. And in that situation, then it becomes much more approachable to say, hey, I need that a little higher. Because I know that my setter is gauging their own success off of my success. And I think in that situation, that also empowers that setter to be the active participant in soliciting and just bringing that out. And I think when I watch successful young or older teams, it's that I love that. I tell that to kids in the gym all the time. It's always your bad. You and I will have a conversation as a coach and a setter on things that we can do to make your performance better. But on the court with your teammates, it's all you. And you can live on that. You can live with that because guess what? They're going to do everything for you. And they know that their success is your success. And the earlier they can get to that point, it opens that communication. They be comfortable in having those uncomfortable conversations with their teammates, and you see them blossom really quickly.
There's always something good that probably happens. So if the tempo's good, make sure you say that.
Yeah.
If the location's good, the tempo wasn't, say, hey, I love that location. Just go a little faster. So make sure you're recognizing the good too.
I think it's important, and this is a bit of a shift, but the language that you have when you're communicating as a coach to your setter is really specific as well. So they need to know there's a difference between tempo and height. You know what I mean? So making sure you clearly define what those mean. I like to use this is wide, inside, tight, off, right? Those are all directional cues that maybe the setter can't see all the time because they're setting along the net and I'm at the end of the net and I can see actually this got a little wide. So being clear with what your directional feedback is going to be for them to be able to make adjustments, and then speed, tempo, height, right? Those are the actual set trajectory cues. But making sure that it's clear what you mean, and all of the coaches or everyone that interacts with that setter is using those same feedback cues, because that's going to ultimately impact how they're developing, because that's how they're used to getting feedback on their reps and stuff. So if you don't have that plan, I would start to think about what are the words that we use when we talk about sets to our setters.
Totally agree.
I think, I'm a big believer that one of the setter's best friends on the court is your lib, because they can deliver so much information to the setter that may not necessarily be coming from those hitters. Again, specifically around location, because they're seeing from back to front and seeing where things are at. And you gather information from your hitter that you're delivering your ball. You look over your lib, and they're like, in, out, high, something like that to give you another perspective. I think those two roles pair so well together in just understanding how they can succeed together. We talked a little bit about mental toughness, but I think I want to kind of end this segment really around are the things that you guys are really working with setters around being mentally tough, because I think branching off of what we just talked about, the fact that they're going to take that bad, right? You have to be pretty mentally tough and confident in your own skill set and your direction and what you want to do as a leader of a team, to then not just allow that to completely bury you, right? Are there things that you guys like to do early, as well as, in their college careers, to ensure that we have mentally tough setters, because we're putting a lot of burden on them?
It kind of comes with the position, right? So it's kind of what you're signing up for a little bit. And I think it's more, I like the phrase more like of you have to be more mentally flexible. So there might be something that happens after the first 6 rotations when we're playing someone, and we need you to completely abandon everything we talked about in our scouting report, and we need you to go more here, similar to maybe a previous team that we played. So you have to be pretty mentally flexible to scratch that and be cerebral enough to understand why we're doing it and how you right away need to start maybe changing what you're doing a serve receive and where we're putting people. So it kind of comes with it. And I think great setters they love that part.
Yeah, I don't know about specific training stuff aside from those are the intangibles that we're looking for when we're recruiting those types of setters. You know what I mean? So you fortunate enough at the college level, you
have it or not. Right.
You know what I mean? Those are the kids we're trying to recruit. But I do think great setters have both this really short memory span and also a macro understanding of what has gone on in the match so far.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a really interesting juxtaposition, kind of, to be present and in the moment, and here's how we're going to win this point. And also in the back of my head, I know that my L2 has gotten the last 4 kills for me. You know what I mean? So how do we keep both of these and keep the team right here in this point while you're probably crafting your next couple sets or plays, or my outlet on this, if it doesn't work, is going to be this kid who's been hot recently. So I think that's a fun kind of dichotomy to talk about with setters, and just can we work through that balance? So there may be some situations in practice where I'll just ask our setters hey, who's been your hot hitter the last 5 points? And if they don't have someone in mind, now we're talking about that piece. You know what I mean? Is there more macro stuff you can ask them in training to help them see the big picture of what we're trying to do while you're still trying to win every single point on a point-by-point basis?
I mean, you have to wear 3 different hats, right? You have to show your emotion because your teammates are looking for that. You need to be calm in the moment because you have to have appropriate decision making, and you can't be over emotional on your decision making. but you also have to be cerebral in sense where you're understanding both where you've been and what the moment needs, right? Just because this worked 5 times in a row, they may have adjusted, right? They may have brought in a 6-9 right side to stop your, like there's certain things that you just need to, I'm still going to set them, but.
Well, you need to talk about the coach not playing the 6-9 right
Oh,
side
yeah, that's
before.
true.
Like, why are you
That's
waiting
true.
until you get down to put in this monster to go block everybody? Like, come on.
She was playing middle last match.
She sprang her ankles. As we kind of close this episode, anything, a couple key cues that you want to say, hey, young setters, these are your 2-3 things.
You can be undersized and be a great setter. Just make sure you are just owning that a little bit. Like generate a great second skill, whether it's being a great defender, being a great, manager of personalities. Like it's one thing to be a great setter and do all the cerebral things right, but what's the second thing you're bringing to the team? Maybe you are the taller kid who can block. Maybe you're the shorter kid who plays really good defense. Those almost equal out a little bit. So there's got to be a secondary skill you're good at too.
Mark?
Yeah. I think I would tell a young kid that setting is one of those things you can do by yourself all the time. You don't need somebody else. You can get all the technical reps. You can get all the movement pattern reps, all the square up reps. You just need a ball, right? And you can bounce it and get the movements you need. You can toss it up. You can have somebody toss, right? We can hit off the ground into the wall that will kick a ball up and we can go move and set. There's just a lot of opportunity for you to get better technically on your own. So use that opportunity and then ask your coaches the IQ stuff, right? Ask for feedback about decision making rather than your technical cues as you continue to develop. Like shift the conversation so you get the full picture of what it is to be a setter rather than just getting caught in the technical delivering of the ball phase.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think understanding early that you have a knack or a gift for that portion of that technique, and then it becomes your own decision. And I think we spend most of the time here talking not about technique, but talking about just your overall role and what you wear as being a setter. And I think the collegiate programs are looking for that. Club programs are looking for that as they're looking for people to fill their squads. And then obviously teammates are looking for that too. And I think a really good way to, really branch out and be a better setter is, focus on these other tactical things, because you're going to surround yourself with people who want to play with you. And that in and of itself is probably the best sign of a setter. Who wants to play with them? Who's going to follow them? And I think that's paramount. So
level 1 of coaching right there is you're done playing. You already have a step ahead probably of most people wanting to get into coaching because you've been thinking that way already.
Exactly. Yep, exactly right.
Which, who set out of the 3 of us that are now coaches?
Yeah. Did we all set?
All
of us?
Yeah. So, just saying.
Yeah.
So with that being said, episodes definitely endorsed by setting. And shout out to Volley Moms out there. Keep watching.
Shout out to Volley Moms.
Keep watching. Keep commenting. We love it. We love it. Thanks for watching another episode of Triple Blockheads. Hit us up on the socials. Drop us a line. And until then, Blockheads. Blockheads.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Triple Blockheads. Make sure you like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss an episode.